Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time for 2024 Oscar predictions. June update, we're doing Best Picture. Really, we should call this the post-Cannes, post-Spider-Verse video, because those are the things that have happened that are significant. That's right, major awards developments happening all year round, and even next month we're getting Barbie and Oppenheimer, so oh my God, we're gonna have another update. I want to do a double feature, I want to get caffeinated. Well, I guess we're starting off with Cannes because Killers of the Flower Moon. Some people might say, well, you didn't love this movie, you just liked this movie, so why are you putting it at number one? Well, listen, the buzz out of Cannes has been tremendous. People love the movie. 4.2 on LETTERBOXD, over a 90 on Metacritic. The Irishman was kind of hitting those numbers, but something's a little different here, I think. I thought, okay, well, this movie's obviously like one of the biggest locks, especially because we've seen it. And I was kind of thinking, maybe that or Past Lives is number one, because I think Past Lives could win original screenplay. Killers could win adapted or director or an acting award or two. But what really made me put Killers at number one was when I watched the press conference, not in person, but online with this cast and crew. And the way that they're talking about the movie, I was like, that's a good narrative that people might be able to get behind. They're talking about how Scorsese worked so closely with the Osage to make sure that he told the story in a way that they approved of, and the way that they actually changed the direction of the story, and they changed who the story was focused on to make sure that the story of the Osage people was at the heart of the movie. And do you think they did a good job of that? I think that they could have gone further in it. I think they did a good job of it, and that's why I think they could have gone further with it. I'm not the only person who I've talked to who has seen the movie that has that complaint. Maybe that complaint picks up, but for the most part, people seem to be liking the movie a lot. This movie, you could see it win Lily Gladstone, or, Robert De Niro and DiCaprio are at the top of their game. I don't know if they're going to be as likely to win, but you got to consider that, the fact that they're at the top of their game. And then, director or screenplay, like those categories could come along. Like there's a winning package that I can see. My complaint about The Irishman is that it's too long. Is this too long? The 3.5 hours kind of flew by. There are times where I think it goes a little too heavy into the procedural territory, but it's not entertaining. Scorsese doing another crime movie, that's not that interesting. He does, most of his movies are about white collar crime, but to the extent that it focuses on Native American people, like we never have, I guess like you could say high budget movies about Native American people. The movie also feels kind of urgent and important, and is like a microcosm of the way that white people are like fucking over other groups throughout American history, and this piece of history that we haven't looked on. Like there's stuff in there that like I think people are going to be discussing. I think people are really eager to be like, this is The Fabelmans, this is The Irishman, and I understand, like, that's my initial reaction. It's like, oh, this is going to be the movie that gets 10 nominations and doesn't win anything. I understand that, but the reason that films get 10 nominations and don't win anything is because the narrative doesn't take off. Like, there's just not much there with the narrative. Like, when you're just a good classic movie, it's not quite enough these days. It's just not enough. Past Lives, though, I think that could win. That just came out. So far, it's doing well. Limited release. I don't expect this is going to do nearly as well as like Everything Everywhere. It might do like okay as a limited release. I think it'll do well overall. It won't do huge numbers though, because it's not most people's territory. But the people who are seeing it are being knocked off their asses. They're being knocked out of their socks. If you don't love it, you're in the minority. It's that kind of thing. I think we're both in the group where we just like love it. It might be the best movie of the year. Even though I definitely think it might win screenplay. I don't know what else it would win. That's really it. I feel like it would have to win maybe an acting award, and I just don't know if I see Greta Lee winning Best Actress. The performances aren't like huge in that way, I guess. And we've seen how important it is to be up on stage with your actors, like whether it's SAG Ensemble or whether it's just winning an acting award. It might get a lot of actors nominated though. That's a very good thing about it. Acting, writing, directing, picture is like enough to win. Honestly, we should say maybe it can win director. Probably now you're going to say that Scorsese's going to win, but they haven't given like a legacy award in a while. They haven't gone that direction, but it doesn't mean that they couldn't. And that's why maybe this race actually will, like, at the end of the year be between Killers and Past Lives. I wouldn't be shocked if it was Killers versus Past Lives. Which is weird to say because, we haven't even had fall festivals. There's only one half of the year. Yeah. Only some of these movies have premiered. But in the past few years, a lot of times when you get to this point, you have seen the Best Picture winner somewhere. There's usually one competitive fall festival film in terms of winning. This year weirdly feels a little weaker for fall festival, but that's why I'm waiting for maybe a surprise. I'm getting the sense that fall festival this year is just going to be a little less packed. Here are the movies that could go to fall festivals. The Holdovers for sure looks like it's trying to be that big TIFF movie.
Yeah.
People say that it's going to be like a crowd-pleasy Christmas movie. It's going to have good performances. And then you have Saltburn, which I moved back in because I was like, I got to put another fall festival movie on here. Like, you just kind of got to.
You're just trying to do the numbers. You know, you're trying to crunch the numbers.
Yeah, well, that one's probably.
I don't hate the strategy.
It's probably going to be one of the bigger movies of the fall fest. And Emerald Fennell apparently is kind of leveling up her game as a director with it. Maybe The Color Purple and Dune Part 2 can premiere at a fall fest, but those also could be just movies that release on their release date. That could also
I think those are both like they could or they couldn't, and it doesn't really matter. Like Dune doesn't need to. It's going to have the box office. The Color Purple honestly doesn't really need to either. That has like a big enough name and legacy. Do you want to make an apology statement on putting it at number 1? Because now we feel like the trailer came out and we're like not as jazzed about it.
The Color Purple is it's not going to win Best Picture. I still think maybe it can win acting awards and maybe SAG Ensemble, but like clearly it's not winning screenplay or director. Like just clearly it's not going to win those. It just looks like it's going to have possibly even under a 70 on Metacritic. Like it looks like it's going to be a Christmas crowd pleaser movie, and that is not the kind of thing that wins Best Picture. It didn't look amazing to me.
You know how there was a test screening reaction that was like, it's not your mom's Color Purple, or
no, that's what they're saying about it.
Oh, it looks like exactly targeted towards my mother. I still think it's going to do very well at the Oscars because the acting is mandatory to nominate.
It is a high ceiling,
and they're gonna like that shit. They love the musicals like this.
And then you have the summer movies this year. I mean, this could be the biggest year for summer movies since 2010, which had 4 summer movies. You know, Past Lives is a summer film. Oppenheimer, Barbie, Spider-Verse. Oppenheimer, I feel the most confident about. I feel like it's the most traditional Oscar bait out of all the summer movies.
Yeah, it might just be really hard to ignore. If he does a good job and it's like Nolan does it again, I mean, it's Oscar bait and Nolan did again. This is a historical biopic, and you know it's probably gonna have some stellar texts.
Barbie, maybe it's Babylon is a thought I had. I mean, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna be Barbie. It's not gonna be any other movie. But I'm just the hypothetical. What if it's Babylon and there's just a lot of like tonal weirdness that throw people off, but the highs work really well. There's like an amazing movie in there, but people just get lost in certain bits. And maybe Letterboxd loves it, but critics are a little more mixed on it. I don't know. It's probably just gonna be its own thing.
I actually kind of understand what you're saying. I don't think it's gonna be quite Babylon, which people fucking hated. Like there were just some people who just hated it with a passion. Like it's not going to be an endurance test, you know. Babylon was kind of fucking with the audience and how long it was and how like kind of gross and raunchy it was.
Barbie might be pushing people in terms of like how political it gets. It might be poking some people a little bit.
Well, they're not the people who vote for the Oscars.
Yeah, maybe
they're not Hollywood folks.
Apparently it goes for existential themes as well as political themes and comments on gender and body image and all this stuff.
Barbie could be a little divisive. You know, that's where I see what you're saying.
I think Barbie is not going to be like everybody loves it. End of story. I think it's actually going to be somewhat mixed.
Yeah, I agree, but I often remember that, you know, not everybody loves all the movies that get into Best Picture.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I remember Promising Young Woman. Not everybody loved it. People had problems with the ending, and it did really, really well.
Well, Barbie still is like, you know, I do think production design costumes are coming along. It could get original song. It could get a...
Supporting actor.
Gosling still seems like he could be strong.
Could happen.
Maybe, yeah. So there's still enough going for it, and I think...
If it smashes box office, like
it's going to smash box office. It's going to make... It's projected to do pretty well. Like, it's a big, buzzy movie that everybody in the film industry is paying attention to.
Making it a film about IP is just the most like generic and easy to take down thing, easy to criticize.
But it's doing it in a way that I don't think has been done.
Yeah, it's just doing it in such a different way.
Now let's talk about Spider-Verse, and then I think we'll talk about the Cannes movies.
Yeah. Spider-Verse is possibly on track to be the highest grossing film of the summer. It's worth 2 watches. People are going to go back to see it. It seems to have some legs.
It's not like Into the Spider-Verse. I don't think it will be treated the same way. Into the Spider-Verse came out right at the end of the year, and all it did was take down Incredibles 2. That's all it had time to do. Nobody had time to realize, like, how great the animation was and, like, how great the movie was, and actually have the discussion as to whether or not it deserves more. And now people immediately know that maybe it deserves more, and we've seen the impact that the first one has had in only, like, 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, Into the Spider-Verse took animated feature in a fucking cakewalk in a year where Incredibles 2 was supposed to win, and that's kind of funny to even think that Incredibles 2 was poised as the frontrunner. But not only have people been marinating on the first movie, they just got a movie that honestly is probably better. It's deeper, it gets more into the characters, it spends a lot of time like developing story and character, and the animation is more expressionistic, even more marvelous than the first one. And that's saying something.
And I think it's more risky. It's like one of the most visually stunning movies of
nobody
recent
wouldn't say
times
that.
or ever. Or
no one would not say that. It's one of the most visually stunning films.
And obviously the acclaim on this one is through the roof. I mean, the critic reviews are about the same, although you have pointed out that on Metacritic, this one, although they have like the same score, this one has more 100s. There's more people who are like way
a
at
lot
the top
more.
on
The
it.
first one has about 7 100s, I think. This one has about 17. The reason it doesn't have a higher score than the original is because there's more people who are feeling like isolated by the overstimulation, and that's just because, you know, some film critics are just a little older and they're just not on the same boat.
Or maybe
I really think that's
the part one thing. The fact that this is a part one, though, does that hurt it a little bit because we know that there's a part two coming, and maybe we can just wait to award that one. And if WGA and SAG things don't delay the next one, there will be trailers out for the next movie when this movie is supposed to start getting nominations and stuff. So maybe people will be like, we can wait a little longer for the next one. The 4.6 on Letterboxd, the type of acclaim that it's getting on Twitter and everywhere else and anywhere that anybody's talking about movies online is reminding people of Everything Everywhere All at Once and the buzz that got. I definitely don't agree with people who think that, this movie came out too early. Not at all. It's going to be good for it to build buzz and come out this early.
Yeah.
There's already Oscar buzz. There's already Best Picture buzz. The question is, are the Oscars in on this buzz, or is this really just movie fans in these online spaces are more into animation and comic book films than the Oscars are? 'Cause that's true that they are more into that stuff, but I feel like usually the Oscars aren't so disconnected. And last year we had that debate. Are the Oscars disconnected from the buzz on Twitter with Everything Everywhere All at Once? Is it too overstimulating with the multiverse shit? And the answer was
a resounding fuck no.
A resounding fuck no.
I liked this when I was watching it, and I was like, it's good that there's a long-running theme about parenting in this. It's very good. Because you need to hit with everybody in all ages somehow if you want to go to the Academy Awards. And Everything Everywhere, even though it was really hyper appealing to the younger people, having those older actors in there and having the message about family absolutely helps. So this one, it really helps that it has that going for it. And I don't think it's like as deep about that as Everything Everywhere was, but I really like that it's there. The below the line nominations are a little bit of a question, because I remember sometimes when we're thinking, you know, is RRR going to get Best Picture? What can it get? Oh, maybe it gets like a couple text and picture. This is
and that's
the trouble
like
for me.
You do need a good package. And with Spider-Verse, the main thing worth awarding in the movie is the animation, and that's the animated feature category. If you go outside that, I think you can say Best Score for sure. Like, you know, if the movie were in Best Picture, it would get Best Score. It would probably get adapted screenplay.
Yep.
But it's weird because it's like with movies like Up and certain Pixar movies that have gotten in, that felt like the screenplay was almost ahead of Best Picture. With this movie, I feel like screenplay is just pairing with Best Picture because it's such a visual movie.
I feel like people want to give it Best Picture first, but often with these films that seem like a little outside of the box, it feels like other potential wins or nominations are like leading them into Best Picture. For Everything Everywhere, you had screenplay and supporting actors like, well, and editing, it could win those. So I guess it's, you know, Best Picture is just mathematically correct.
Or with Mad Max, where it's like,
Mad
you
Max,
have to give it text.
That's why we're predicting Barbie.
And Black Panther.
That's the reason we're predicting Barbie.
The main trouble here with Spider-Verse is that it doesn't seem like it's leading with other categories.
And that is why RRR and the other Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, got hype, but then they couldn't get into Best Picture. And it's also why Black Panther did get into Best Picture. It's part of the reason. When they see a movie as being awards worthy, it's usually in like several categories. And it is a problem with Air too, actually. It's a problem with Air. But RRR, like, you could have made an argument for cinematography or visual effects, but no one was doing it. Like, no one was beating that drum. The Hall was a little weak for RRR, even though I was like on board with that getting Best Picture at some point. I was like, I think it's gonna happen. And I'm scared that this is a movie like RRR and like No Way Home that people really want to make it happen, but it's just not there. However, I think it's different. I think it's got.
I come back to the fact that like the passion is crazy,
and also it's easily winning animated feature, so everybody will see it. Everybody will see it. They'll probably see it multiple times.
I mean, maybe you can argue that Everything Everywhere prepped people for a movie this overstimulating. I think there might be a case for this movie in sound, although there was that like sort of controversial thing where they had like some sound problems in the theaters.
Sound's one of the maybe categories.
It's a maybe category.
I'm not really convinced about sound.
Scores is a category again. I don't think it would get in like without the movie in Best Picture. So that's the thing. It's like, it's kind of, all these categories are holding on just to this Best Picture.
I think score is one of the most likely categories.
I think there's one category where it's still a maybe, visual effects.
Yeah.
Depending on how well you can make the case. Maybe that's even a category it can get without Best Picture. It could get song.
I'm not as convinced as some people that I'm not jumping the gun on this and saying like it's definitely going to happen. It took me a little bit to marinate on it, but certainly the passion's there. Like, how can you get more love for a movie? You actually really can't have people love a movie more than this movie. I think a lot of critics are going to put this in their top. And also, a lot of critics are, you know, superhero friendly these days. I've noticed,
the Critics' Choice is going to nominate this movie in a lot of categories. They might even over-nominate it in production design and stuff.
I think the Critics' Choice is going to go all splatter it.
Maybe it gets PGA. The other thing I thought about last year with Everything Everywhere, I was like, if this doesn't get in to Best Picture, if this doesn't get nominated, the amount of backlash is going to be crazy. And I feel like that just doesn't happen.
Out of touch. It's an achievement in something. And that's the thing is like, you could call this an achievement in cinematography and production design. You could call it an achievement in directing. But because it's animation, it's hard to like find the people who did it. And they're like, yeah, you did this. No, it's like a huge collaborative effort.
I feel like with Guilds, what are the early signs going to be? Because it's not allowed to get WGA as an animated movie. Does it get a surprise, like, production design mention at the Guilds or something? Does it get a couple surprise
does it do well
things?
at the Guilds?
Yeah, but it's like, can it do well at the Guilds? I don't know.
I don't know. And I think because it's such a glaring achievement right in our faces, like, I hope that this gets Best Picture. I hope it does. I'm not even the film's biggest fan. Like, I don't personally, like, know if it's going to be in my top 10. You got to throw some trophies at this thing. I mean, it did a lot.
All right, now onto the Cannes movies. And you got me here who went to Cannes. I know what I'm talking about, all right? The Zone of Interest, we actually tried to predict last time as maybe being the Cannes breakout. Turns out The Zone of Interest was the best movie of Cannes. I don't want people to get the impression that The Zone of Interest is in any way Oscar bait. If you have The Zone of Interest in your top 3, it's because you haven't seen the movie. That's what I have to say. You need to start with a lot of skepticism and then go from there. Like, the movie is experimental. It doesn't have a story. As far as I know, a movie hasn't been nominated for Best Picture without a story. Even The Tree of Life has a story.
I was trying to pick your brain on this, and you were like, it's not about the characters. And I was like, what the fuck? You're like, it's not about the people in the movie.
It's a fucking portrait.
You absolutely started from a place of like, I don't think the Oscars don't go for this stuff. But we were talking about it, and, you know, it's one of the most buzzy films right now.
And we look at the fact that this has a 98 on Metacritic.
And not many films get a 98 on Metacritic.
And over a 9 on Rotten Tomatoes, average rating. And you need to sit with it for like 2 days before you actually like have a full opinion on it. And it stays
like
with
people
you.
Going into it thinking that they're, you know, like being like, I know I'm going to love this. Like, you know, I love like the Oscar movies. Like they're going to be like, whoa.
Like, yeah, it's about the Holocaust, so you might think it's Oscar bait, but the movie's literally just about Nazis like hanging out in their garden. I mean, I know that it didn't win the Palm, but it came in second, and when you talk to people, everybody kind of thought that was one of the best movies of the festival. I think that there's a lot to be said about the movie, and the movie is really good at reminding us why it should be told, and why it's not unnecessary to have this story about the Holocaust.
People are saying it's not like any other Holocaust movie, not even remotely.
It's extremely kind of like cold and stone-faced in a way that is very disturbing.
The other thing I like about this one as like an Oscar vehicle is that it has a narrative. Like, I think you said that even though the film is a little maybe perplexing to people in terms of the style, the message and what it's trying to get across is very obvious and clear. It creates a conversation that people feel is very valuable and needs to be had.
That's why I think it could transcend its own experimental nature, is because even if you don't like the movie, or even if you're mixed on it, you'll probably get generally what it's going for. For me, someone who like loves it, I think that it goes really deep. Some people might say, I get what you're doing, like, and you just do it over and over again. I think it goes really deep, but that's the kind of thing that's like, you know, up to your own mind and what you thought about during the movie, as is kind of the nature of more experimental works. They don't really like tell you what to think about. It's kind of up to you to like think about the movie within the context of the world that you live in. It's a risk to predict this movie for awards, and it even feels weird. Like, I feel like Jonathan Glazer's not gonna like want to awards campaign it, because it just feels weird to do. I feel like A24 is just gonna have to like show it to people, and it, you know, critics groups, especially the like International Society of Film Critics, New York and LA, they might be giving it top prizes. They might be giving it picture or director awards. Maybe it's First Cow and it just doesn't take off. Maybe it's this year's Tree of Life where it gets into picture and director. Really what it is for me is that I think Jonathan Glazer is going to get into director. I feel like he has built up a career that people want to acknowledge. He takes 10 years between this and his last movie. It's just not made in a way that other movies are, and you can feel that when you're watching it, that it's just like this wholly unique and brilliantly realized work of art. I feel like the director's branch could totally get behind this movie, even if other awards bodies are not into it. So the way that this movie gets in is maybe like critics embrace it. Maybe it gets a couple BAFTA noms. Jonathan Glazer's British, and it's kind of a British movie.
Oh yeah, I was going to say BAFTA director.
BAFTA
director,
more than director.
Definitely.
More than director at BAFTA. I think it'll get in the short list of 10 for picture at BAFTA because it's a British movie. And then it gets Best Picture. Maybe Critics' Choice don't even like it. Like, the weird thing is that even though it has like a 98 on Metacritic, maybe it's the kind of thing where Critics' Choice don't even bite. Like, After Sun did not get Best Picture at Critics' Choice despite being one of Critics' top 5 or top 3 movies of the year. Sometimes the Critics' Choice are just like that. And maybe this will be a movie that doesn't get it. Maybe it will, because it also has a lot of potential below the line. You could give it score. The score rules. You could give it production design. You could give it cinematography. You could give it sound. If you wanted to, you give it quite a few tech nominations. But are you really going to do it? I just can't tell. I can't tell how many that Texas would get.
And also, usually, like, the really big contenders are strong in acting and screenplay. This is not really going for those. Screenplay would be like if they fucking loved it.
It is kind of risky to put this in the top 10, I think, but I'm going to go for it, I guess, just based on it being the #1 critics movie of the year, potentially. It didn't win the Palm. That's like a little less buzz than it could have had. I'm really curious how this is marketed and how it plays at, when A24 probably will send it to other festivals throughout the year.
And within our 10, this finally checks the box of international film.
And it might win international feature unless like Anatomy of a Fall wins or something else. So let's talk about Anatomy of a Fall. Why don't I have that in the top 10 even though it won the Palme d'Or? Triangle of Sadness won the Palme d'Or and that got into Best Picture. I don't know if I see this movie being a thing that critics are like really going out of their way and like putting in their top 10s, putting in their top 5s. It is in a sense more accessible than The Zone of Interest, but maybe a little less likely to be like your #1 movie of the year. I guess some people were like totally blown away with it at Cannes, and maybe it'll get in because I think it's going to get Best Actress. I think it might get Best Screenplay. That would be also a worthy award for it. Director, I wouldn't be like as confident as some people are who just say international movie, director, international movie, director. I don't want to do that too easily. That's a possible category. Other than that, probably just international feature.
On Letterboxd, it has like a chunk of 9. All of the people that I follow gave it an 8, basically.
Yeah.
It's a procedural courtroom drama, right?
It's a little bit different than other courtroom dramas.
Okay.
You start out thinking that it's going to be like a big mystery and have a lot of twists, but really it just focuses on like the more nuanced human angle of like this relationship.
Yeah, I could see that the hype being concentrated more around Sandra Hüller and international feature, and it just not getting into Best Picture.
But then again, the screenplay is like good. Okay. And then it's like, if you can say it gets screenplay and actress, then like you can say more than that.
If this was an English language film,
it's actually half in English.
But do you think if this was entirely in English, do you think this would get nominated?
I don't know if that would help it or not.
What if Cate Blanchett was the lead?
I mean, I guess, yeah. Sure. Yeah, if Cate Blanchett was the lead, yeah. Then there's May, December, which is probably one of the bigger contenders, I guess, because you have nomination-worthy performances from Natalie Portman, Julianne Moore, and Charles Melton. It's Todd Haynes. Carol got 6 noms, but he's never had a movie in picture. It's a weird movie. It is not an Oscar bait movie, in a sense. I think the performances all have their Oscar clips, if you want to say that. I just watched it, I'm like, It's just not going to get Best Picture, was what I thought. Yeah, Netflix is behind it. I think it'll sneak in somewhere. It could literally be any acting category. Maybe it's 1 actor, maybe it's 2, maybe it's The Master and it gets 3. Maybe it gets screenplay. I don't know. I think it might get 1 or 2 nominations. Maybe even it can a little bit contend in director because it's really interestingly stylized.
And the reviews are pretty good on it. Like they're not as good as Carol.
Fucking amazing.
I mean, a 3.7 on Letterboxd with like tapering off at the 9 and 10 a little bit.
I just kind of don't.
And I think people are putting it in because they don't believe in Maestro, and so they don't know what else Netflix has, which is very fair.
I'm not going by studio at the moment.
I know, but a lot of people go by studio, and it's just something to acknowledge. Netflix acquired it, so people are going to say, like, wow, there's their horse. Netflix is going to push this all the way. I don't know if it will work or not. Okay, so I have a question for you I'd like you to address, just for fun. La Chimera, not even being
I'm not touching La Chimera.
People are going to want to, like...
No, people
put
are
it
done.
to bed.
People are done
but
with
people
it.
want to put it to bed.
A lot of critics like it a lot.
Yeah,
and
some
sure,
people
it's like
really
some
like
people's shit, but it's the same as Happy as Lazaro, though. That was also some people's shit.
Yeah. So anyway, people were kind of swinging for the fences.
No. This is what people did. This is what people did, and they need to stop it now. They said neon plus can equals Oscars. And then, last year Broker went in with neon on it, and it didn't do anything. Neon acquires the movie after getting buzz, and then it gets awards. That's what happens. That's what they did with Anatomy of the Fall in the last 3.
Yeah, that's a much better formula, too.
And everybody who was predicting La Chimera didn't actually watch Happy as Lazaro. Even if you like that movie, you can't tell me that in any way it's like, oh man, that director, like, she's gonna make an awards bait movie next. Like, huh? Oh yeah, also Asteroid City, which I, deleted. It's one of his most bold, especially how it's executed towards the end. Completely lost me, and I don't think I'm the only one. Some people are super into it. Like, his diehard fans who read really deeply into his movies seem to kind of like it. But it's actually one of his lowest rated on Metacritic and LETTERBOXD. And I don't think that audiences are going to like it that much. There's probably no other movies from Cannes that really need to be mentioned. But if I have to pick one more to talk about, I do have Perfect Days very low because that could maybe get Best Actor. And people like it a lot. It has a 4 on LETTERBOXD. It was some people's shit. I think that the message is very accessible. I thought it was really solid. I don't actually really kind of believe it's going to get Best Picture. I think Neon probably believes in Anatomy of a Fall a little bit more anyway. I want to have Poor Things in the top 10. Both the teasers are amazing. Maybe my most anticipated movie for the rest of the year.
Really?
Considering I already saw a bunch of stuff.
Even Oppenheimer, Barbie.
Okay, fine. In the fall. Because the visuals look absolutely insane. And also, every single craft branch of the movie, there's a whole package there that you could nominate. You could give this movie a lot of nominations. I kind of feel like somehow I'm fighting a losing battle by keeping it in Best Picture. I don't know why. I just feel like it's eventually not going to happen. And I'm not going to like it. And I don't like that people are like, if it was coming out 3 weeks later, it would totally be a contender. But just because it's coming out early in September, it's not. And it's like, well, this movie can hit Venice and Telluride before coming out. And that's not that weird. We'll just say this. I've never seen a movie come out in early September that's trying to get awards.
It could still happen, but I do kind of agree that the release date makes me raise an eyebrow.
If the movie's great and people go see it, then I don't really care.
From people who've read the book, it's going to be really strange, and it's kind of back to Yorgos Lanthimos, pre The Favorite, maybe?
No, it's not. It's the same writers as The Favorite.
Yeah, but I think it's probably somewhere in between The Favorite and, Killing of a Sacred Deer for how weird this thing's gonna be.
For some reason, in the wake of something like Spider-Verse, Air doesn't seem like it's shit in terms of, the actual splash that movie made. Get the fuck over here.
Also,
Air just had a small package to begin with. I just don't see people still caring that much about Air. It's just kind of whatever. It did make a lot of money. Made a lot of money, but whatever. I don't know. Is it whatever? Are people
I think it could come back. The fact that Viola Davis feels like she could get in, but maybe not. If it had an acting nomination that was really guaranteed and solid to get in there the whole year, I'd be like, okay, Air's gonna be part of a conversation at least.
And there's no way it gets text because it's just not that well made.
I've really changed my tune here, but I feel like people just aren't gonna think it's exceptional enough.
Maestro, still seems like it might be a little more messy and maybe not just work with people that well. I don't know if I have anything new to say about most things. How do you live? Oh, that's also going to be a July update. We're going to have reactions only from Japan, though, which could be very different from how people respond in the United States, maybe.
And How Do You Live is doing something very unconventional where they're not releasing a trailer. They're basically doing no marketing up until the release in Japan. And people will be seeing it in Japan completely cold, not knowing what a single image looks like. Also, for How Do You Live, I'm feeling less confident because we know Spider-Verse is winning animated feature. It's just not going to happen that we're going to get another animated film that people think is one of the best things they've ever seen. And it somehow tackles that movie. I just don't see it. So I'm just okay, that's not the breakout animated film. It was Spider-Verse.
Other Fall Fest movies, aside from Maestro, the Flint Strong, Ferrari, Nickel Boys maybe, Strangers, The Bike Riders, Next Goal Wins, Priscilla, Challengers, Napoleon maybe, could be also Venice movies.
There's not really much to say about these except that, okay, they might go to the festivals and maybe they're good, maybe they're a breakout.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Are you doing a Barbie Oppenheimer double feature?